one thing I've learned in life, some people told me, "Oh, you have an accent." Yeah, at least I speak two language.
That's dude, that's exactly it. It's such a nice skill to have, and it makes it even better. Just to be able to go to Quebec and really experience Quebec.
100%.
Like
I'm not preaching for my province here, but a lot of Quebecers are small-minded people who don't want to go out of Quebec, and who don't care about English because they never leave Quebec. But if I wouldn't have learned English, there's no way I would have even remotely done what I did in life. So
nice.
it's totally, and it's funny because we had very bad English courses in school when I was young, and it was very the basic. But I've learned mostly my English from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Simpsons, and the rap music. And my
Nice.
dad wouldn't let me listen to rap music, so I had a very bad English. Sometimes it still pop out because I got the fucking thing, but but really it's something that I was lucky enough to be open-minded. My dad was the second immigrant of my town, so he was speaking three languages when he's two languages when he started to learn French. So the only thing I didn't pick up and I didn't keep as good as my Spanish. I understand mostly all the Spanish, but it's the practice. Now at Neptune, I'm more surrounded with I can count on my hands how many French Quebec name there is there. But there's definitely a lot of Cuban and South American or Argentina, Portugal, Spanish people. So hopefully, as soon as I get another trip, I can keep it, because every time I go on a trip, I come back and I'm way more fluent. But yeah,
Nice.
it's speaking cannabis is always a kind of a language in itself in every language. So that's the part where I can be good at Spanish, but to be able to explain what I explained about weed in Spanish, it's a longer shot.
I can imagine, honestly, because if you just think about, like, I don't know any of the words for like trichromes or like terpenes. I'm sure they're very similar words, but like at the same time there's always going to be exceptions. And then if you're talking to somebody from France versus Quebec,
Yeah.
it's like two different things completely, and you're not so it's definitely
No, and
interesting.
it's really weird. I gotta admit, in Spanish, it's really weird name. Like colas are gorolos, so it's not something that is anywhere near the French. Normally, Spanish is close to French, but when you talk about cannabis, it's like almost like talking about sex shop toys.
Just like completely random, yeah, totally random words, man. That's so funny. Yeah, dude. So yeah, I guess just kind of super casual conversation style. I was going to
Hmm.
base what's up?
No, I was just okay. No, they're here. I was looking for my tobacco for my joint. Sorry.
Nice. No worries, man. So yeah, I want to say yeah, I'm Justin. I'm created a website called extracted.ca, and I'm really just trying to create like a place for the consumer to go to see stuff about cannabis extracts. And so really
Mhm.
like Um, the point of these interviews is obviously to chat a bit about the product and talk about the hash, which I do because I just bought some today and I'm quite stoked on it, and just really have a way to talk to somebody like you who's in the production side of things and connect it back to the consumer. So really figure out explaining like kind of what your products are and kind of how they work, but whatever you want to talk about, I'm down too. I'm sure it's pretty interesting. You seem to have a very, very cool career. Like I've checked you out a little bit. I was checking your LinkedIn and everything, and it's
I'm
like,
uh, I'm strangely very it's funny you say this. I'm very I used to joke around and say I'm a media whore. I like media, like making magazine, making podcasts. I'm very bad with technology, but when people rig it, I love sharing. It's really my element, and it's where I can be really myself. But on my personal life, it's funny because I come from a small town, Sherbrooke. A lot of people knew me already from my generation because I used to run bars and the nightlife stuff. And then when I moved into cannabis, a lot of them actually lost sight of me. And when I moved to Toronto, came back here, and then they see me in the newspaper, this and that. So I can't really go anywhere without having no one I know, and it's all friendly, it's all friends, but at some point you have no personal life, right? So it's a career that is actually for me in my, because I suffer from PTSD. It's something that is actually the best life I could ever dream to live. And as soon as I get home, it's an anxiety problem. So
Nice.
that's a funny story about me about that thing. So that makes me also very humble with what I've did in life. I think it was for a lot of things it was circumstance, and being lucky and be at the right place, right moment. I started the cannabis I started in legal cannabis 2003, when less than 500 people had even a prescription, even less to grow. So I started there with a very unique patient that was actually it's a weird story. She was infected by a shot that was contaminated.
Hmm.
So she ended up with a lot, like 7 deadly viruses inside her, like being the different strains. So I started with that woman because I was working in a hydroponic store where we would sell paraphernalia, nutrients, and so on. So I met that woman, and for me, it was like, wow, you got a prescription to smoke weed. 2003, 2004, no one actually see that. And in order to help her, because she was coming to reach out to know how to grow, and she was one of those people who the doctor convinced to use cannabis because she was against it. So I started to help her and her husband, and we created a good friendship around that. And after a year, I said, look, it is legal. It's a tricky thing, but I can get in trouble for doing this for you, because there's a way of legally doing it. So she made me designated grower for her in 2004, and from there it just started. I was surrounded with nutrient companies, seed banks, because I was selling all these gears that you would commonly find in head shops and hydroponic stores. So I was really involved into from the business side. I was a retailer in all those product that everyone use for growing or smoking and so on. And on the other side, I was really starting to expertise, because there was the only thing you could do is read Jorge Cervantes book. Even in 2003, the internet was not as open as it was, and people wouldn't share as much. So the thing is, I really started to expertise, pheno selecting, and and experimenting with different genetic seeds. That's where I discovered that it's just like your kid, right? Even the same plant that give 10 different seeds, they're gonna be all somehow different, even if they're really stable whatsoever. So I started there, and it brought a lot of attention from all the suppliers I had, because I was like, hey, I got a license to grow your seed, I got a license to try your nutrient, and so on. So I was really nurtured and under the if you want, of the canopy of Canada nutrient. It was a nutrient that I was using personally for for the gardens, and from, in my opinion, one of the best, or no, not one, the best nutrient to really to for resin production, for the quality of the resin. A lot of the nutrient we're selling in hydroponic are done for ornamental plants and shit like this. So it really would drive me there, and really the fact that it was simple to use. So they sheltered me, they brought me to Spain and Cannabis. I was doing pictures, a little bit of report for this. They were finally allowed, these companies were finally allowed, same thing with vaporizer. They were finally allowed to say it's for cannabis, it's for medical cannabis. Back then we were talking tomatoes and medicinal herbs, but then it started to open. The more, time passed, 2006, 2007, 2009, starts to have a little bit more. Then the pot doctor came in, people would just prescribe here, left and right. And that's really how I started. During those years, I was, doing the phenotyping and all that. My main goal as a Quebecer was really to show the English people how you can do things better and so on. So I played with genetics. I shook some egos and belief of people in the cannabis community, because in Quebec you don't have that back then, and very small right now, because it's a jealousy land. Quebec is a very jealous people and stuff like this. So it's not as open community where people get together to be stronger. So I started to do the events in Toronto with the Nutrient Company. I was a lot in the show when most people in Quebec wasn't even aware there was cannabis cups and shows and so on, and they could not attend. There was a bit language barrier. Very few Quebecers actually go to Toronto. So I was going to Toronto and Saskatchewan and all those places where there was the Cannabis Cup event. And during those, I would say the last, from 2013 to 2017, I've earned 44 cannabis awards in Canada. So in 2013, when I decided to, and the Canadian government actually brought the legal market of the licensed producer, I knew the gray zone where the producer were with the compassion clubs and not enough access was going away. So I was there to be a professional, not to be a criminal. It was the time it was back then. We had that protection or that kind of acceptance of helping the compassion club, court decision, so on. Everyone know the story. So in 2013, when that non-access disappeared, I said, this is going the other way, right? We not, there's no future in supplying compassion. We eventually started to get busted and so on. So in 2013, I as soon as the program opened, me and 3 friends from Toronto actually applied for a licensed producer cultivation site, and we were application number 009, believe it or not. So we saw it coming. We knew it would be like some way somehow between pharmaceutical and along those lines with codes for entering each room, security, and so on. So we partnered 4 people together to build a garden. And in 2007, from there, I stopped competition. So when I stopped in 2013, I was actually named the most awarded Canadian private grower. After all those things, because really no one was actually building his resume like this. My point of doing all those shows was not an ego thing. It was to actually shake the belief and say, you can say it's that strain. If it's not grown properly, dry properly, presented properly, you don't get there. You can always miss the flavor. If someone say, oh, this is not my flavor, it's not the pheno I would have taken. If it's well grown, well dry, well presented, you got a note of 90%, because only the flavor is at 0. So in order to maintain that was my approach to it. So I stopped the competition in 2013. I've worked really hard because the first license were actually very hard. We were one of the first, one of the lucky 50 they call. So we were number 47. We got licensed in 2017, almost 4 years after the application. And 2018, we got acquired by MPX, now MPX International. I sold the company, and after all those years of, during all those years, I still grow for my own purpose, and 1 or 2, patients, some of them being, very well-known advocate. I really, because that's what one thing I would only grow for people who really need that help and deserved it, if I can call it. I don't say some people don't deserve it. I'm saying I chose my patient, because why would I give my talent away to people who would be ungrateful and say, oh, I want more. So I really chose those patients. So in 2018, when we sold, I took almost a year off. I'd say almost a year and a half off. I was more into coming back home, going fishing, spending good time, spending a little bit of that hard-earned money. Yeah. Because we were in the good time of the acquisitions times and stuff like this. So I just took a small break from the industry, all that while keeping growing for personal reason. And in early 2019, I was actually selected for as a curation committee, as a curator for a distribution company based out of Ontario. I was selected as sommelier on out of 25,000 applicants. That sommelier thing, I'm a heavy smoker. I can say myself, I don't have the best nose, the best palate. I like what I like, and I try to put myself in the pants of someone else, like if you want to create a strain or select a strain for women's, you have to put yourself in the mind of people. And that's what I did for almost 12 years doing competition. Like I said, if you don't have the perfect flavor, it's one thing, but if the cannabis well grown and so on. So I really use that as a sommelier skill to say, this is well grown, this is badly grown, this could have been trimmed more. And the flavor is always subjective, right? So at some point, we can compare it to alcohol sommelier, but it's totally a different, I think it's totally a different aspect. I think there is a value of saying, oh, there's a tone of basil and a tone of oregano and a tone of spinach in that smell and so on. There's definitely a need and those factors that comes in play. But more than this, there's the whole process. So knowing what overwatered plant tastes like, knowing what a plant that was cut too early, a plant that was dry in a humid condition, a plant that was dry in a dry condition. That's really where I can expertise really as a sommelier, because I used to say I do the sommelier on the process, not only on the not mostly on the product. So that being said, I kind of never looked into going into solely extraction. It was a circumstance, weird meet. Neptune being in Sherbrooke, my hometown. I saw some construction and I was like, I think they're building a garden. Let's say if I can help them to, put them on the map, because I've joined a few consulting project here and there in the area, because it's one thing to put your own town also on the map, right? It was a project that I wanted to maybe push and try to do. So they say, oh no, it's not construction, it's the landfill in the back. It's we're never gonna grow. So all right. So 2 months later, I get a phone call and someone reached to a friend of mine who reached to my brother, who reached me to say, hey, call that guy, he's trying to reach you. And he was a chief financial officer for Neptune back then, Martin. And he started to talk to me that, he knew I met some people, someone from the facility already, but, it was not about growing, but they're interested to know about, formulation and being really both thing, being able to do the human testing, because I'm the only one who can lick the spoon at Neptune. I'm the human tester under the R&D.
Nice.
So it's, they needed someone for, testing the product, but also addressing the biomass, because a lot of people at Neptune didn't know much about biomass. They were just licensed. They were coming from krill. They thought krill was like cannabis, and they thought cannabis was like krill. So it's, at some point you have, there was a lot of moving parts back then. And I actually, they said we need someone to help us, source the biomass, make sure we have a right biomass for the right product. They start to acknowledge that there was a big science behind it, rather than just being, oh, we extract a plant. And that's how I joined Neptune. I really start to work on helping on the product development, a little bit on formulation under the R&D team, because I was originally under the R&D team as a formulation specialist and sommelier. So I was really giving the leads, giving what I knew. And I'm very good at solventless extract. I've been growing, doing solventless extracts for as long as I've been growing, because it was, one thing I was always doing, selling also the bags and so on. So, I worked hard to get solventless into Neptune. Originally, the people that were there back then didn't believe it. They just said, oh, there's no market. And I said, it's 10,000 years old. The people have been smoking hashish more than weed. If the market's not there, it's going to get there. And, sure enough, the market gets there. But I've worked a lot, and I was deeply implicated in actually putting that division up, because it was a big thing. Neptune was under cold ethanol and CO2 extraction. It's pure science, and it's a very good technology. But my opinion of Neptune was that we have to polish that gem and make it a versatile extraction center. So when we there was a lot of movement at Neptune, a lot of change of direction for the business. We were in B2B before, never into B2C. Ashish had less space there too, because it's a very manual work and artisan work every time. It's you can try to automatize that thing. If you do so, you'll become president of Afghanistan or Lebanon, because they've been chewing that gram off for 10,000 years, right? So to make square is it's really a monk job. It's really like very it is very labor intensive. So when we moved B2C, that's really where things started to move, on that direction. Solventless was taking more attention for us. And realistically, I've joined Neptune. I was saying, what am I gonna do? I'm leaving this industry for like a year or so to go fishing, have a quiet time and relax and recenter. And I'm going the other direction. I'm going into extraction when I know shit about CO2 and ethanol. I knew what needs to be known on, or what can be found on the internet. But I never really played with that. Like I said, I was there to be a professional, not a criminal. There was no way I would set up an ethanol extraction system in my garage or a distillation system. I always played really by the rule of the MMPR, MMAR. I wanted to make sure this thing doesn't get me in the wrong direction. So I really joined to be able to bring something from the cannabis world to these people who actually had a lot of knowledge on science and thermodynamic and filtration and so on. But I was also going there to complete what I didn't know about, what I didn't know about extraction, and what could bring me more knowledge about biomass and plants. Because one thing we know is that in biomass for solventless, you're very directly dependent of the plant. And I've been able, to work with all those years to identify what that extract gives me if the plant is over water. What does it give me if that plant is harvested too early? What is it if I harvest that strain too late? Because I used to have, I still have about 10 strain. Most of them are award winnings. I think 2 only I think I got, kind of late in the lineup, so I never really presented them in the competition. But all of them are genetics that I'm growing since, day one. There's a few I ditched out, but all these strains, for most of them, I've been growing them for over 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. So, I did, and I would say I did so many runs because I always run perpetual. So you have a run every month. So you learn every month about everything. It's the same thing when you join that legal industry. If you do hash for Neptune, you'll learn more in a year than I did in 5 years, because I wasn't running hash as much as, I'm not running batch every day at my place. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, I start to identify, okay, what does it do when you do this? What does it do when it do that? And some technology, it's different, like ethanol. No matter what you go, if you're after, you'd say the THC, you're only after the THC. Who cares what's else in there? If it's harvest too early, too late? It's a yield thing. It's not a property thing. So I start to really pinpoint that, okay, when you do ethanol, you can go with a product with less thought behind it. CO2, you need a little bit more thought behind it, and solventless, you need every aspect to be behind it, because if not, you're gonna make a shitty extract. It's directly linked. So what I've learned from Neptune, and working in that big environment of massive learning and extraction, is that you have levels, and if you have a biomass that fits the first level, you go with that system. If it fits if it doesn't fit the first level, does it fit the second level of extraction, the second technology? Okay, let's go to the third one. But solventless, for me, it's something I have really at heart. One of the reasons why I think it's one of the best extraction system is because it's non-disruptive. You agitate, you remove the trichome, that's it. You're not dissolving them, you're not squishing them between 2 hot plates to create a rosin. You don't disturb the oil. So if your biomass fits the profile of solventless, you should start with solventless. It's not all the product that can be done with solventless, but if you talk about disruptive, integrity of the properties of the product, if you think about longevity, everything that's non-disruptive will be way less oxidizing, aging, all that, if it's non-disruptive. So that's really why I always strongly believe in solventless. Plus, it's something people have smoked for 10,000 years. So that's a little bit my career, to make a small resume of 30 minutes. I'm sorry.
Don't even worry about it, man. I love these interviews. I learned so much from so many different people. And so, when you're talking about developing like a product for the market, because this is really cool to me that you've been through that process. So just bringing it back to the hash that you guys that have just came out. How long did that product take to develop? Like, where was that point of inflection where the company at Neptune was like, "Yep, we're doing this. You're going to be making this, this hash, this bubble
It
hash,
is
and then
it is a quite an extensive process because of the environment we work on. We work in. I've seen so many good growers, so many good people from the cannabis industry who actually miss their own show. People who say, "Oh, I'm gonna wait and I'll join later," and so on. It is a hard environment to work in because it's a highly regulated environment. And often I say, I don't say you're a bad grower, but I doubt your good growing skills in the highly regulated environment. And that's either you fit in, either you don't. Of course I like I like to do hash at home where you don't weigh everything, you don't wear the hazmat suits and stuff like this. But again, a lot of people don't understand. Oh, I never killed no one with my weed. Yeah, but you're producing a product for the masses. No one wants to eat your cheese macaroni if you do them in the dirty kitchen. That's why there's high regulation around commercial chicken when you sell to masses. So as soon as you accept that approach, you really should go in. Like I said, I've seen so many people miss their own show just because, oh, wait, when the program is better, when the regulation are less crazy. But you know what? I've seen people waiting since 2013. And if you talk about going into the industry right now, thinking you're going to bring some legacy history or skills or whatever, there's already 7 years of legal practice in the cannabis industry. So right now you have people who have got a doctorate in cannabis. The window of opportunity for people who were skilled coming out of the shadow from the legacy was that big. So either you fit in the first 3-4 years, you can always get a good deal and you're skilled, we're going to pay you the salary of a doctor, but you need to fit in the mold. So that's the first part. The highly regulated environment we work in is a daily challenge. Daily, you receive biomass, you need to get reception, you need to get the QA go on it, sampling, analyzing on the third party lab. There's so much of things when you think about it and you say cannabis is a time how I would say it's something that you can't say, oh, I have time, right? Every week is 1 week older on the weed. Every 2 weeks is 2 weeks older on the weed. A month later, the harvested was almost a month. So every step that really prevents you from acting quick is the challenge. Because cannabis, you got your harvest, it's dry, it's cured, you need to move it. Because the more you wait, the less it worked. It's that in chemistry we say, as soon as you get it, kill it. So that way you can check it, you can analyze it. It's the same thing. We all want the product to be well done, but needs to be out right away. And that's what we see, overproduction and these things. So the biggest challenge is this. So when we created, let's say, Legacy, I'm bringing in 15 years of experience of hashish, and I was one of the lucky first one to understand fresh frozen. So I bring in 15 years of experience, and then I have to make this work in that highly regulated environment with PhDs and chemists and people who sometimes are not at the same level on cannabis than I am, or don't understand it as much. I used to joke around. There's a difference by dropping your pork chop on the floor or dropping a chip on the floor. The chip might be still good. The pork, you may want to rinse it. So all that approach of QA is super important. You need to have the best QA team, which I'm proud to say we have great QAs in Neptune that do everything they can and above and beyond to make Pedro happy and the whole thing, the whole production portion happy. So you need a good QA. You need obviously to be careful because there's a lot of equipment company and sellers, and their jobs are to make you believe that without their equipment, it's impossible. So that's why they sell it for $1 million. And what we've seen a lot, as much as consultant who actually had nothing on to show up for, very few consultants in that business can tell you, I received that license, I applied for that guy, and show up the credit. That's why I built up a resume of cup. I could show those cup right now if you want. So as much as this, you have those sellers who tells you this is GMP compliant, this is this, and this is that. And what I encounter is 90% of those people don't even have an understanding of GMP at all, or very basic. They just think that as soon as it's stainless or plastic PTFE, or it's food grade, it's GMP. A lot of them don't get it. And I'm not an expert GMP myself. I often, get that some equipment and I get like, oh shit, I didn't see that crack, or I didn't see that gap, right? So I'm not an expert at it neither.
Just out of
So
curiosity,
that's really where, like I see, the highly regulated environment is always a daily challenge. So there's a lot of this that happen, with every process, solventless and all the other ones. Everyone claims that it's cool, it's ready to go. When you start to look into CSA, GMP, quality assurance, being okay with using or sanitizing these material, it is, mostly a big part of the development with all the SOPs and all that. After that, if you have someone like me know what he's doing, and you have people up you that believes in you and put your trust in you, that's what you get. You get legacy hash in almost no time.
Yeah, I gotta say, I just wanted to ask, what does GMP stand for, by the way?
Good manufacturing practice. So it's a standard that normally you have for pharmaceutical. You don't need to be GMP. You need to be GPP, good practice, good production practice for cannabis. But if you really want to go somewhere with a company, I sell, it's a little bit like this. You sell weed locally, then if you want to sell weed provincially, and then you want to sell weed, you start to need to build those ISO and those GMP compliant and certification, because if not, where you're going.
Yeah.
So, Neptune being already a GMP, certified, before they were in cannabis, because they were in krill before. So, GMP for food and drugs and so on. There was always that focus, and finding GMP equipment for cannabis, they're being built as we request them. And often it's, like we all seen that. Anyone who went in a hydro store or went in a hydro in a head shop say, oh, it's done for cannabis. Yeah. What, the sticker says THC, that's why it's done for cannabis. So there's a lot of that. This is also a daily challenge. Maybe I'm lucky because I owned a hydroponic store for almost 10 years, like I said. And I was, I got trained with those sellers who would say, this nutrient will give you 2 pounds of light, and all the whatever crap a seller would tell you to sell his product. I got kind of trained with that. So, it's always a good help to, smell the fishy things. But the reality is, not being a GMP expert, I sometimes, get a product and I'm like, oh shit, it's clean, it's usable, but it doesn't have the GMP compliance side we're looking. And we do as much as we can to keep that GMP focus at Neptune all the time. And that brings also its challenge, because like I said, not all the equipment are what they said when they sell it to you. Once it's at your facility, that's where you find out the little cracks and nicks that makes you understand that most people don't understand these parameters.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I deal with my day job. I deal with salespeople all the time, and I feel that, like, the before and then the magic happens after, and you learn all sorts of fun surprises with that. So,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
A lot of LP actually, from on the growing side. To give you an example, I've spoke to a few growers, because I sometimes I consult for Neptune for growers and so on. And what they start to do is, okay, you want me to buy 2 of your trimmers? Well, send 4, 5, 6 of your trimmers. Send me 1. Let me try it. If I like it, I'll buy you 6. So they send a demo. If they don't like it, and that's how people start to weed out the bad seller, because to listen to them, it's the holy grail. Every time it's the new thing. And it's the part of the selling business, right? I was a seller for decade, so I understand it. You need to wrap up your customer, make sure he has that bouquet on the head, you get the paycheck, and then let's shovel the bullshit you said it too fast, right? So especially in $25,000 trimmers or stuff like this, you will make it work for him once he pay you. So it is a lot. This is no ignorance. It's the same thing than the consultant who tells you we're going to make your application for you, and 90% of them fail or don't know exactly what they're doing. It's the same thing for the same thing. We had that in the hydroponic industry. Now we have that in the licensed producer industry, because this light, this HVAC, this, that, and everything is the holy grail. You can't pick one. You had to pick them all.
Yeah, that's actually really funny that you kind of mentioned like how it used to be like the hydro stuff, and now it's the license. Like the market has shifted from like random people to like organizations and structure and all that sort of thing.
Who cared about food grade paint on your trimmer when you were trimming outdoor in your barn? Try to hide from the farmer, right? So but now they have that food grade. So it's the same thing. They go at it and they work around. They kind of design their product, having you as a little bit as a guinea pig. Without being that, they do the work, they bring the machine, but you're the one who's going to tell them. So that's why a lot of people say, hey, wait a minute, send me a demo. That way I don't have to commit to anything. And, if you have to make it work and blah, 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 you can come and spend all the time you want, But this is why they went like this, because and we saw a lot of investors get sorry for the word, but fucked by this, because you have those people who say this is done for cannabis. I've seen machine that people this is done for cannabis. No, this is done for canning for canning pop sodas. No, it's done for cannabis. It's $300,000. The only thing that is make it cannabis is the THC logo on it, because no matter if you bottle pops or cannabis pops, it's still a fucking pop machine. I can buy a used one, clean it, and put a sticker. It will be probably even more better, because the guy did that for 20 years. You're at your third fucking machine because you want to put a sticker on it. So there's very good equipment out there. There's very, very good suppliers, but more than anywhere else, I think there is a lot of people try to be millionaire the next day, and it was the same thing in hydroponic stores. Always was. They look at the seed business is the same thing. This seed will get you 2 pounds. This one will get you 27% THC. Most people buy a seed and claim their weed is 27% THC because that's what's on the pack. Yeah, maybe 1 out of 100 gave him a 27%, and that's the label he put on it, because of course it's a good selling fucking factor. So you see that all across the cannabis industry when it was in the gray or black market, and now you see this in the white market. The only difference is everyone wears suits and ties, and there's a little bit more resource, because if you would buy a trimmer and not happy about it, don't try to return it to the hydro store. Now they send you a letter, come take back your machine, and you go get it back. So that's mostly the only thing that changed. And the size of the machine.
Yeah, definitely the size of the machine's all scaled up and stuff like that. And so I was thinking about that, and like the production of the hash and everything like that. Like how did you guys handle like the scaling of that? Like did you guys, because when I think of hash, I think exactly like you. Like last week I just made some bubble hash myself. I had a couple ounces, and I got it. It's a lot of fun to make, but obviously you guys are making hundreds and hundreds of pounds of it. So like
the biggest challenge is not to scale up. The challenge is to scale up and keep that integrity of the product, which is handcrafted and artisan. If you try to, I used to joke around. I had the engineer who said, oh, but we can do this, and the machine would spit grams. And I'm like, no, man, it's been 10,000 years. And when you ask a Lebanese, a Moroccan, or an Afghani guy on the side of the road for a gram, he take a chew in it and he give you that, sloppy gram. So if you did invent this, bro, you're going to be president of Lebanon. So, there was that big gap of trying to understand that you cannot automatize everything. And in the place, like licensed producer and stuff, it's not something, and especially in the big business, it's not something that they adopt. Like everything can be automatized, or at least semi-automatized and so on. So, the biggest challenge is really to scale up, but keep that integrity that you do when you do, a small pail in a drill. So we are using, GMP compliant systems to actually do the separation and so on. And we do everything, batch per batch. So the scale up is really double, triple, do 4 or 5 times what you're doing rather than putting one big extractor, because when you have the scale up, this is where it always change everything. You can do 20 years in business making super nice oil with butane or CO2 or whatever with your vessel of 20 liters, and everything works fine. You're the best one for 20 years. You make that 40 liters and everything goes wrong. The scale up of technologies and extraction are one of the biggest challenge. But I'm a strong believer of redundancy and being able to just scale up production, not ignoring that we will need people. I think Neptune really adopt this as a thinking. They're not always after cutting, or we want that facility to run with one guy who pushed to one button. They're really not there. So really the trick at scaling up cannabis, in my opinion, is to scale up the process you mastered, not scale up the vessel, not scale up the system. This is a true belief of me, especially on solventless. But there is always place for scaling up equipment, but it is I would say a step-to-step thing. And that's very costly. That's not something normally investors like. That's not normally something that engineers like. For them it's all calculation and parameters and books. But cannabis being very unique, very own in its own world, alone it's in its own world. It's really where we still learn every day. Why is that resin is so delicate? Why is that resin? Because if you look at krill oil, before this, let's example, the scale up goes hard, start being hard, it's way bigger, and it's probably even less sensitive, even though that little thing they used to do was like a shrimp that big and extracting something from the eye of that shrimp. But that oil was still less sensible. I would say it's sensible to some points on some parameters, but way less on production. So it's always the scale up of equipment. Cannabis is for me, it's every day a mystery. That's why I like it. That's why I thrive in it, because every day you learn something. Every time you master something out of the blues, what can go wrong will go wrong. So you always have this, and then on top of it, just think that all what I just said is also then multiplied by 1,000, because there's 1,000 genetic you have to work with.
And
so it's a web.
It seems crazy to me that, like, on top of balancing the production and working, being able to create an authentic product, I think is a point that you've really made here. But like, on top of being able to do that process, you've also had to choose the plants and like the genetics about that. And I was going to ask you, like, what sort of elements to a cannabis, a quality cannabis plant lend to a good hash? Like what did you choose?
For me, it's a very good question, Justin. For me, it's really, when you get to that point, if I used to say solventless don't lie. If you do rosin, your rosin is black, something is wrong. It might be tasty, might be good in your opinion. Put yourself in the pants of others, right? Right away, color is 30% of the people buy cannabis with first their eyes, second their nose, third their taste. So you have to keep that in consideration, because you're into market, commercializing a product. You're not after what I like. So solventless tells you a lot about what you do in the garden. So that's why, I think I like to think I thrive in there, because I understand so much the garden that, I know when to walk away from a biomass or from a garden. And for me, one of the key elements is really understanding the approach of the garden. What kind of nutrient do you use? What kind of approach do you have? Do you harvest because you read on the description that it's an 8 week, or do you harvest because your trichomes looks ready? Do you harvest because you have experience and you have that feeling inside when a plant gets ready? You know exactly when it's at what stage and so on. Just looking at it, you can almost not put your day one of flowering on your calendar and so on. So for me, it's really where, you know, how the garden is managed. What do you use? You know, what process? How do they process the post harvest? Because you can work 2 months on 3 months on an harvest, have the best harvest ever, and kill it in 2 days. You know, you have to have good technique of drying, good technique of curing, making sure that when it's cured, it's cured. It's not like, oh, it's gonna rot in the bag. You know, we see everything in that industry because you see so many. Just a few weeks ago, I unpacked myself 1.5 tons. So you see a lot of product at that point. People who think that phenotyping on 10 seed, and I was thinking like this, is, you know, is breathing. You know, just in fruit tree, we plant 5,000 plant to save only 3. So imagine in cannabis where it's unstable. So I think it's really start at, you know, knowing how the garden is managed, how it's approached. Depends on what biomass you're looking. Again, if you're looking for THC only, let's get trim, let's get this, let's get that. You know, you try to shop for good deals and so on. If you look at solventless, you have to put the money where you need your product to end. So starting with the garden, and then, you know, I'm a grower myself, and, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you grow the best weed in the world. I would never say this, never claim this. And even I know I'm a good grower. I know 1 batch out of 4. I'm OCD about it, but I'm not proud of it. I'm like, oh, this was not my best one, or this was. So it happens even to the best one. People who say no, next call. So for me, it really has to do with this, and then the maintaining of the process. Is the guys in control of the yearly process? Because every year, especially here in Quebec and mostly everywhere in Canada, you got 4 seasons. So even if you have insulation, if you're completely closed loop, closed system of, you know, growing and so on, you still have the influence of heat, humidity, cold, dryness. So if you're in control yearly, that's where you see really, you know, you can do a good batch. But if you don't do year after year, you don't know if you're really in control. And that's why I like the monthly, you know, perpetual harvest, is because, you know, next year, oh, today is 40-degree outside. This is the problem I'm going to have in my garden today. You can look at the weather and figure it out. So if that approach is also covered, then simple human testing. You try, you know, you make sure you try the product is nice, is good. And again, sometimes you have plant that doesn't give you result, you know, return. There's plant that give you a hash that, you know, it's hard to get, you know, sometimes the greenish hue out of it. Listen, you can work around a lot of the problems, but the reality is, you know, if you start to try to make a Dom Perignon out of a sour grape, you know, you may add up a lot of sugar at some point. So for me, like I said, it's really, for me, it's really about, like I said, the non-disruptive. If you ask solventless, the non-disruptive, if the biomass fit this, use that approach. If a garden, and I trust that the control and so on. I've seen garden where, you know, I was sourcing biomass and I saw change in control, change of growers, and some growers took the place of another one, and the garden was going like this, while the stability, yeah, maybe he didn't have 2 pounds, 3 pounds per light, but that 1.5 was constant and was great quality. So when you see the garden yield is not much what I look in it, because I buy quantity, that's it. But I mean, if your yield goes like this, your quality goes like this. One time I got a hash green. Sometime I got a hash that's really golden and give me more because the plant were more mature and stuff like this. This is not what you look for. You know, you look for the same way than extract artists in the black market. You know, back in the days, people used to do shatter and booter and butane extraction often. You know, to not to name any companies out there, a lot of those companies were out there, still out there. These people were, were okay. I'm good at doing this. I don't really want to grow. So they went at the best growers, do collabs, make sure that their skill was, the added value was coming from the biomass, but also from their skills. The grower was all in. Oh, my juicy New York City diesel is now a juicy shatter slab. So it's to bring the skills together. And if the extractor was not able to actually source good material, he would eventually grow. It's the same thing when there was the collab. If one of those collab was being more picky or more hungry on the deals, at some point the extractor would say, okay, I'm doing collab, but I'm buying out of my pocket to make my extraction brand. So at some time they always balance this. Is the same thing. It's a symbiotic thing that I think you need to have, especially for us that we don't grow. It's a symbiotic thing that we have to have. And if an LP is trying to just turn a product that you can't move into a hash just because it's the thing to do, this is not a good approach, and the hash will always have an inferior product. Solventless is not something you turn trash into gold. It's really something that, like I said, it has to fit. If it fits, this is the first technology you want to use. If it doesn't fit it, go everywhere else, because you're only putting out inferior product.
Nice. That's kind of cool that you think about it that way, because I've always thought about it similarly with like a BHO or like an ethanol extract or a distillate. Like the most purest, but like the most extracted thing that you can get that's consistent generally is something like a distillate. And you can pretty much, from what I've heard, is you could pretty much turn anything into a distillate, just if you follow the process and do it.
Yeah, at that point, a distillate is more about the efficiency. It's the same thing in the garden again.
Yep.
I've seen micro producer. I got 160 genetic. Look at my mother plant, dude. You got 2,100 square foot. You're gonna have problems selling your weed for multiple reasons. I wouldn't lose square foot. I would be as efficient as I can with every inch of that square foot. It's the same thing. You can take very good material. You're gonna get 15, 20%. You're gonna get the THC mostly out if you do, small scale, lab scale. That's another thing people don't understand. All lab scale is very easy to get everything out. When you get big vessels that produce volume, there's a lot more at stakes there, and a lot more fine tuning and adjustment. It's a different thing. Neptune runs, sometimes we run 24/7 on those processes. So the thing is, you can do mostly probably everything out of distillate. The problem is, where is it going to be efficient on ethanol, on labor, on the maintenance of your equipment? I've seen personally distillate, in some of the gray market, medical market, so on. The guy was replacing $5,000 pump every 5 run. Because there was some crap in it that wouldn't separate the way they wanted. And if you start to nickel and dime this, a lot of people have that perspective that cannabis is easy, makes you rich. You have to count every cent, man. If you don't count every cent, the bigger you grow, the bigger you go, the bigger the equipment is. If you grow a small grow up, yeah, you have to replace a 4-inch fan for ventilation. If you grow 20 lights, you need to replace a $5,000 HVAC. So everything becomes really business, for people who never own the business, to control, let's say, that whole line is very, very, very dangerous. It's one thing to be good at growing and being, enjoy cannabis, but it's another thing to own and be profitable and financially healthy with a business. Yeah. It is, as anyone who had the business, even you, Justin, just having a business of interviewing and the website and all that, you need to put time. No one's going to do things for you if you own a business. It's you can hire employee, but if the employee doesn't make it, it falls on you. So I own personally multiple business, and I think anyone here that that can say if you own a business, what is sleepless nights, and what is stress, and it's not for the fainted heart.
Yeah, definitely. And no, I mean that's a really interesting point that you make though, and something that like you can see the difference between somebody like me who has these kind of assumptions about cannabis, like, you know, we can make anything into distillate. But your point that you're talking about is so perfect to emphasize the difference between the reality of the customer mindset, somebody that buys it, somebody that has an image of like the black market or the gray market, and then maybe looking into the legal market, and they don't quite understand the differences between those. And you know, kind of mentioning, like, again, it's so perfect. If you have to replace a $5,000 pump every time you process product, that's never going to really make you that much money if it's, you know.
It makes you that much money if you see it on the scale of being in your garage and supplying the the area, or sometimes the province. And again, I'm weighing my word carefully, because the balance of financial health of a business is something that, like I said, everyone who own a business know margins are always shrinking, and it's harder every day to make money in retail business and wholesale business and every aspect of life, especially with COVID. Hopefully it's ends soon, but it is a hard thing, and it's constant attention, right? So it makes sense when you talk about black market, the small people, or the people who say, hey, I'm going to put up like 5 liter of this every month. I'm going to be the king of the world. When I was talking about the scale up before, that's where the people who can scale up the most without affecting that quality have an advantage, a little bit like we do at Neptune. Because when you can produce for way less that milligram, I can afford to pay way more pump than you, brother. So it really comes to this. Cannabis is always seen as a passion thing, and it is, and it was, but not when you talk about producing goods for the masses. It's something to make a soda pop and sell it to the local grocery, and everyone likes it. It goes up to Montreal, and you sell all of a sudden 100,000 cans monthly. But when you're talking about millions of cans, we're in another game. You have different inspection, different regulation, different, and it doesn't fully apply to cannabis because it's mostly, Canada wide, the restriction you have. But then you have all those other restrictions, man. You have every province wants something different. Every store wants something different, because it's a passion driven thing. So the passion makes you believe, I grew that weed for $400. Let's turn it into this. That all of a sudden, I did like for $2,000 worth of this with my little $400. I made like $1,400 to $1,600. But at that point, it is, you can call it for you. So, even if you break that pump, you're not going to see it because you never had that much distillate to smoke, right? So it is becoming a business, and that's what people don't calculate. Like I said, the micro producer, sometimes I see, I got 100 plants in my mother room. Why do you even have a mother room? No one wants, 5 pounds of this, 5 pounds of this, 5 pounds of that. Hey, I got 60 pounds, I got 12 kind. No one wants this. Province and distributors and sellers want a good strain that sells well with consistency, and we all know that's going to change in a year, because people will get used to it. They will get a tolerance around that strain, and then it's not going to be a thing. And then 2 years after, hey, remember that Jean-Guy? Oh my God, hey, I wish it was still around. So at some point, you have to live with the reality of the passion and make it a commercial level and viable, financially healthy business. It's like trying to get rich with artisan. When you do my aunt used to make those hanging hooks. Like they put it with the braids around and all that. She could have done 100,000 of them. She would have never get rich, right? So we have to live with the reality that it's a passion. It's artisanal for most of the process of the product, flowers, hashish, I'm talking here, and then try to make it a scale that makes it worth to be in the business. So it's really, like I say, it's you have to see every little downside of it, aspect of it, penny, cents, dimes, everywhere. it's crazy. 10 cents on 100,000 unit is most than people can even invest to start a business.
Yeah. That's a really great point. And I mean, it's you know, every time I interview somebody like this, I learn more about the business of cannabis, and it's really fun to be able to kind of do that because again, I bring it back just always to the consumer. Like, you know, it's really all about getting rid of a lot of the preconceptions on how cannabis is produced at a scale. But it's also nice to know that there's like people like you out there just still kind of making sure that it doesn't go too far into this like goofy world of automation and like
Well,
potentially,
I mean, that's where a lot of people make mistakes. I mean, I do mistakes every day in that environment because it's something. If someone tell me, oh yeah, I did this before, well, come and teach me, man, because it's every day I've learned something. The thing is really that, we've all seen the, some of the LP having like a bad reputation and having say, oh, it's a corporate thing, they just think about the pennies. But there's a way to look. There's a joke around going Quebec. A lot of people was saying that Quebec was one of the first distribution model that made money that were actually worthwhile. While, let's say, New Brunswick just losing money. And try to remember, do you ever remember, remove the fact that the guy got arrested, got busted, whatever. Do you ever think that a drug dealer could not be profitable? So,
Mhm.
if someone sells weed legally, there's every reason why you should be able to do it, but you have to take it on the perspective of the product you're trying to sell. And the cannabis is a craft artisan thing. If you try to grow too much in one area, you will get problem that you don't get if you get half that area. And that you have to mitigate that price of production with what makes sense for every batches. I've seen people growing way too small batches, because let's say you grow let's say a micro producer produce 5 kilos monthly because he has all those rooms and going around. No one's going to buy and sell 5 kilos right now, because it's not enough really to be an offering. And if next month you don't have the same strain, it is, even though there's craft program coming, you need consistency. You're looking at a SKU. Making a SKU first is a lot of hard work and money for a company, and then it's a lot of hard work and money for a distributor to put it on the shelf, to register it for the province. The stores has to make space shelves for your product and all that. So there's all those things in count that, there was no experience for this really. There was the experience of the guy who sold pop cans and the guy who sold weed for pay his university classes, and then they matched together. But that's the thing that some people did wrong. I'm happy to be at Neptune, and I'm very I'm proud and happy to be there, and I'm happy that the right people listen to me, and that my voice is heard and taken consideration. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people get in those position, and you're the flavor of the month when a lot about especially cannabis. You're the flavor of the month as long as it goes good and someone learn it's good. But I got the chance of having a very 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 good boss. Our leader, that on the cannabis division, Remy is doing a very good job. He's very knowledgeable. He's a guy that learns very quick. He knows what to listen and what to let go. In cannabis, a lot often ask question, very good question all the time. And our CFO COO Tony is giving us all our trust. I mean, and we see results. Like if you really you cannot let the cannabis guy lead that thing, but you definitely need him to lead those teams.
Yeah, I see. I definitely can see what you're saying there, man. That's actually a really great way to think about it, because just with the business and everything like that.
When people argue, just say, don't listen to the weed guy. You watch. It's gonna prove itself.
Nice.
Slowly.
That's hilarious.
But I gotta admit, I'm very lucky. Like I said, the direction at Neptune for the launch of Mood Ring, Tony and Remy have done an amazing work. Our team at the QA were, I mean, above and beyond, and did a lot of hours to, to make sure that we were doing things properly. We've seen a lot of people, sending the product, not even, checking the barcode before they leave. So if you don't check the barcode, you only know once it's in the province if the barcode is good.
Oh.
Sometimes it's not. So all these little things that our QA team brought, our analytical lab QC people. It's we have always on as soon as we do a production, within the 2 hours we got potency. It is a very good team, and I, like anything, it's a team effort. I'm a very good grower, but I always had good help of one of two help friend who helped me trimming, and I do my hash. I got my buddy who comes, and always the same buddy who comes and help me draining the hash. So the same thing than what it is when it's your passion. It's a passion that radiate around you. That's what fantastic about cannabis. Cannabis make friends and radiate around you. It's the same thing. If I didn't have a team like I have, I would be a very lone Mexican with a pail and a drill, and try to thinking that I will make a difference. It's a combination of multidisciplinary. We have, our director of a VP of operation is actually, someone who worked for a long time in recycling. So he brought a lot of knowledge on, material for the packaging, how to understand recycling, because we're very careful at Neptune. We plant a tree every cell. We try to be sustainable as much as we can with the crazy regulation, of packaging and that, that part of where we're linked to the regulation. I think Health Canada is doing a lot of work to improve this. My hat to them, because it is navigating between a natural product and a medication. So you have things that is standard for everything. The same way we have a standard label for cannabis, we have standard label for medication, for Advils, for Tylenol, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. I think the people who launch cues in their life, like drinks and this and that, understand very much clearer that part of restriction regulation, because they all face problems. So I'm lucky to have that great team and to be part of that team. Like I used to say, we're all Neptunians, so be kind with each other. And I think I bring a good energy. People, you've been with me for almost an hour, more than an hour, on the 30 minutes interview. So you start to know me. I bring I think a lot of love and a lot of of upper mood to the people. I'm the weed guy.
Yeah, no, I think I think they did a really, really awesome job in selecting you both as somebody to speak about the company, and then just being the guy that really cares about the weed. That's the person you want talking about the product. That you don't really, for me, I was already convinced. Like I said, I bought some today just because it's definitely it's a nice way to sell it and create a story around it that isn't just, hey, we just released this new thing out here. Like this, what you've just told me here today is so much more substantial and interesting, because you're not the only person selling hash on the market, but you've definitely created the most interesting story around it for me. So
well, it's like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have been able to live this passion. If you ask my high school teachers and my high school friends, I'm not surprised. That's the only person who are not surprised I ended up there. All the other ones are like, my parents are really, but really it's it's a matter of being, accepting we're changing, we're changing the world of the people. I personally don't have kids, but the thing is, someone told me one day, you need to be a wise man to plant a tree where you will never sit under its shadow. So the thing is, my belief is, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm not dying or anything. I'm generally in good health. I think that with the speed and how much cannabis takes from you as a passion, I think I must have like probably 10 years more. But when I look at all those engineers who helped me in that project, and the real warriors behind it, because I'm like a football coach. They're like my warriors. The reality is I look at them 25, 26, 28 years old, and I would give everything I have to go back and know this much about cannabis and be that young. So that being said, I think, I have that long debate with a friend of mine who never joined the industry, even though they had multiple, chances to do so. And I told him, I said, I do that for your kid, man, because when your kid is going to be making hash in the legal market, it's going to be fun to make hash. Right now, it's hard, it's intensive. You have to suit with that hazmat and all that. At some point, it's going to get better. We didn't have bars the next day that alcohol went legal and stuff like this. So social change are long things, as much as the color of skin of people, as much as the sex equality, as much as this the sex orientation, as much as the woman being able to vote. All these social change, alcohol, and not so long ago we were banning, I remember they banned Red Bull for a while to bring it back. So it's always an evolving thing when society change, technology, so on. It is generation. Look at moonshine. The people were really, the people who kept drinking moonshine were the people who lived out of it and drank only that. But their kids were like a little bit less into it, and their kids even less. I look at the kids today; they don't care about growing, man. They have all the flavors in the world in their eyes. But what we're doing today is writing the first page of the first chapter of legalization, and it's a very long book that will be written for the world, because Canada is just a wave that gonna take the world over. Everyone knows this everywhere we see it. But we just closed the book of almost 100 years of prohibition. So it's only the first page, man. Like there's a lot of stuff I would like to see change in the regulation that drives me nuts every day. But it's what it is for today, and I'm happy to be part of history and making sure that when someone like my nephews are start to grow hemp. One of my nephew is into hemp, really for fibers and sustainability. I'm very proud of him, actually. When he gets to do this, it's going to be a whole other world, and it's going to be what we will have initiated that change. Because if no one does it and everyone looks the other way, oh, stupid regulation, the reality is it's not going to work, and it's not going to go anywhere where it can work. So we all want to see what was in the legacy market be the legal market. And that's why I make a lot of effort to say, don't try to reinvent cannabis, because when the people who will get interested with your story, like hopefully people here do, they're gonna dig history now on Google, no more in books, because that would have never be written in books. They will dig history on Google, and they're gonna learn more. For the person who's not triggered by history, for who a joint is a joint, you're just an interesting part of his day. But for the people who develop, a love for cannabis, a passion, a habit for it, they will dig. And if they dig lies and tromperie, I don't know how you call that in English, scams.
Yeah.
You are the person who sent them on the wrong way or didn't know better. So you're definitely losing your this guy knows his shit, or you get the reputation that he tried to me, right? So that's why I put a lot of effort to this. I put a lot of effort of the people that I work with when they will be my age. It's gonna be what I would like to live when I get to retirement. So I'm doing this for history, for myself, for my passion, but I know that the others will have way more fun than I do.
Damn, that's a great statement. And honestly, I think I'm gonna conclude it here, because that's like how else am I gonna wrap this up without just saying, like, Jose is, And I think that's, I'll just say a couple more things, but basically, that's a great way to look at it. I wish more people had that very specific view of like, we have to think about our, like, the history of what we're doing right now to be in its absolute infancy, and we just have to give it some time to evolve, basically.
100%. We really have to do so, because like I said, if you would have looked at what it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago with alcohol, it was, oh no, this is going nowhere. And the reality is, it takes acceptance. It's a social change. It's a large social change. It's probably as much as the rights of homosexuality and all that. It's almost as big as this. My parents are a different generation. They're 80 years old. They would have never thought that I was going the right way. For once in my life, I was right to not listen to them.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, thanks so much for your time. This has been just an absolutely awesome experience. I can't thank you enough for coming onto the show.
I'm happy, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Anytime we can have a different discussion other than what I did in life, how I see life, but definitely always happy to say yes.
Thanks, Ben. I'll definitely keep that in my pocket. I might think of having some conversations with a couple different producers, people who are in the extract space. So keep an eye out for that. I might shoot you an email in the future, because I think it'd just be a great conversation to have with lots of different people and kind of opinions. But for now, thanks for jumping on and chatting and telling me about yourself and the company you work for. Like I said, I'm stoked on the product that it came out. I will be doing a review, so I'll shoot you an email with my review once I do it, because
100% happy to hear what you have to say. And remember something. So far, the reviews are great, and it's an entry level hash. It's the lowest Q hash that we're launching. So it's really I really wanted first to recreate what I lived when I was young. The old timer were like, oh, hash start to be a little bit less. And we were like, oh, wow, a gram of hash. Let's buy this instead of 3 grams of weed. But the reality is, I wanted to recreate the good old style 80s, 90s Moroccan hash style. Dry material. Of course, it's part of the process. If you do commercial hash, you want that dried, pure material. So I really recreated that, tried to get, a good, nice golden, pale cannabis to make sure we have that blunt texture. Mm-hmm. And it's our entry commercial level hash. So at 54%, not bad. And the reviews are great. A lot more coming down the pipe, I can tell you.
It was awesome. So when I went to the store, I went and I bought it, and I bought some gray beard terp slush as well, just another concentrate product. And the lady didn't know about it, but her colleague just chimed in right away, and she was like, "Man, it's awesome! You're gonna love it." And I was like, "That gets me stoked to hear," because it came in on Monday. Like hit stores on Monday. So
one of the things that's important to understand is the same thing that I've been explaining just a little bit. Was the fact that you have to realize what product you are evaluating. If you try to evaluate my hash as a dab hash, that was the point of making commercial hash. It's you don't go, oh, I'll launch a 90% concentrate and then go down to 30.
Yeah.
So our entry level hash is 54%. It should always be in the nearest 52, 56%. That's where we try to keep the target. This is also a challenge and a secret. So the thing is really to evaluate this as it is, and according to the price that is sold. We have other product and other SKU coming down the line. Just remember that we will have a line of solventless SKUs that will have other product, and you will be able to evaluate apples with apples later. For now, you're evaluating a good apple, a very good fresh apple from Quebec.
Nice.
And it's gonna be. I think you're gonna love it if you compare it to whatever hash you would have bought when you were a little bit younger. So it's really that approach. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I'm very a believer of create a product for the intent and for the demographic you're looking. I'm looking obviously at, you know, a little bit older people or baby boomers and people who were using in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yep.
So definitely that's where I wanted to start, and then I'll bring you to my journey up to the 2020.
Nice. I can't wait. I seriously cannot wait to see the other products that come out, from Mood Ring and yourself. So,
A lot of work.
I definitely, when they come, I'll be sure to let you know what I think and review everything. So, all right, Jose, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. Have a good night, good weekend, and hopefully we see you again.
Yeah, I definitely will. All right, ciao.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.